G'day, my name is Shayno, the Bogan Life Coach. I come from Queensland in Australia, and I'm a regular bloke with a very important mission. In the second half of 2019, my life took a very unexpected turn, and since that time, I've been on a journey of self-discovery and personal growth, which has taken me interstate and overseas. My vision is to help other ordinary folks do extraordinary things by educating them through my videos, talks, and interviews with various people. My aim is to serve, so let's get to work. Rightio, I think I've hit record. Yep, we're recording. All right, sweet. Let's play some music there. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, guys, welcome to my podcast. My name's Shayno, the Bogan Life Coach, and welcome to another episode of What Do Aussies Need to Know Right Now. And as always, I've got a very, very special guest with me today, a man by the name of Anthony Laye. Now, Anthony Laye is a very, very established mentalist, performer, corporate presenter, and has travelled all around the world. And we're lucky enough to have him based here in Queensland and on a permanent basis, which is really, really sick. And this bloke is absolutely dynamic. He is impeccably well-dressed, devilishly handsome, and has these deep baritone sounds that I tell you what, if it was a different scenario, I'd even consider turning for him. But that's a discussion for another time. So, look, Anthony Laye, please, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, Shayno.
Oh, mate, look, so juiced to have you here today. And look, there's so much to cover and there's so much going on in the world right now, as you well know, and there's lots of changes. And my goal here today is to just sit down and speak with as many people as possible who've got different perspectives about what's happening and how we can help the average Aussie person or, a high-flying Aussie person. It doesn't matter. But to pivot through these difficult times. And I know you've got a lot of insights. You've got a lot of stuff that you do. You do a lot of trainings, a lot of stuff online. And you've got a fascinating story. Like, there's so much that you've done, and I'm really, really juiced to find out a bit about that. So why don't we just start about... tell us a little bit about how you became a mentalist and a performer and a magician, all this kind of stuff, and tell us a little bit about how that all came about.
Okay, so clearly not originally from Australia, from the UK. And when I was back in the UK, I had a joinery company.
Right.
And one of the things that I formed an interest in while I had this joinery company was magic. I became really fascinated by magic, and so I started to use magic as a you'll appreciate this, Shayno. I started to use it as a tool to try and impress girls when I was down at the pub.
I wish I knew that back in the day. They had a bit of higher strike rate.
Trust me, it doesn't help with the strike rate.
Yeah, really.
But this interest in magic then grew into me then doing a few performances for some of my clients within the carpentry world and within the joinery world. And long story short, the joinery business that I had, that went all pear-shaped. And I made a transition, I made a big shift, and I decided that because the business had folded, I would move out to Australia and start a whole new life. So I moved out to Australia. And when I arrived, I'd done a few gigs and I'd had enough of carpentry at that point in time. And I thought, I wonder if I can make it as an entertainer here in Australia. And so I put a show together and applied to go on cruise ships because cruising was being a big part of entertainment at that time. And I think cruises are a big part. Have you been on a cruise at all, Shayno?
No, I haven't, mate. I've been I've been cruising for a bruising for a long time, but I haven't been able to get on a ship as yet, and especially with everything going on. No, I haven't had the privilege.
So you should get yourself on a cruise. You definitely definitely fit in once they start going again. And so I took this gig on the cruise ship, and it went really well. And I then got offered dates for the next year of me going on to be an entertainer.
You got dates? I thought you said this stuff didn't work on girls.
Well, in actual fact, I actually wooed my wife with a magic trick. She was really drunk at the time, so
I can verify that, guys. She's upstairs. It's full legit. They got married. Yeah, it's happened.
And so I started performing on the cruise ships. And then what happened was I started to get a few gigs within the corporate arena. And at this point in time, I'd shifted from magic over into mentalism and a bit more of the magic of the mind kind of thing. And as I went into the corporate world and I was performing at these gala dinners, I was getting corporates coming up to me and asking me, look, can you teach us any of this stuff? Can you teach us how to influence people and do this weird mind stuff? And I was like, well, look, there's an element of what I do that can be applied to business. And then so that started my journey then into becoming a trainer and using my skills as a performer and as a speaker to help people in business communicate in a much richer and a much more impactful way.
Nice. Wow. And so what was the transition like going from joinery business owner to that? How did you deal with that transitional period?
Well, I think one of the key things here is I had this big idea, and this is showing my age a little bit here, but you wouldn't look for a mentalist in like the yellow pages. That's whereabouts you'd go to look for your tradie or whatever.
Yep.
So when I said to all my friends and family and stuff, look, I'm thinking about trying to get up a career in the entertainment world, they were straight away no, you can't do this. You can't do that. This isn't a real job. You need to go and get yourself a real job. There's no way that you can make it. This is just a hobby. And so that was probably the hardest part of the transition, was having all of these people that in the past had known me, loved me, and supported me were suddenly telling me that what I wanted to reach for was a stupid idea.
Yep.
And so within that transition period, I started to change my network of people and started to hang around with people with different views and different opinions.
Nice.
To help move me forwards rather than hold me back. And so the transition was an interesting one, because obviously I'd gone from very much hands-on, picking up the tools every single day, to all of a sudden using my voice and my ability to entertain as a form of communication. And while that was fun, I think the one real key takeaway that I want everyone to take away from this is you've got to be really careful who you're surrounded by, because the people who you are surrounded by are going to influence your choices. And if I had listened to them and gone, okay, yeah, it probably is a bit of a hobby and I shouldn't follow it, then I wouldn't be whereabouts I am now. And trust me, it's so much fun doing what I do now.
Yeah. Well, I can totally resonate with your story there, Tony, because when I first went to UPW with Tony Robbins at the end of last year, I came back to me scaffy mates and I told them all about it, and they thought I was gone batshit crazy. They didn't believe what I was saying. I thought I'd join some sort of a cult or whatever the case may be. And look, it's not easy, and you do need to be careful, because when I got back into that environment, I felt myself sliding back into those old habits and those old ways of viewing. I started to think, yeah, maybe it is a cult. Maybe these people are crazy. Maybe I'm being sucked into something that I shouldn't be doing. And whilst they have the best intentions, I'm sure your friends and family did too, it doesn't have the best outcome.
No, absolutely. And then I think the next part of the journey there is this transition, because it was something completely new. Not only had I moved to the other side of the world, I was also trying to completely change my career, do something completely different than I'd ever done before. You end up in this place where you start to doubt yourself a lot, and you really start to ask yourself a lot of questions internally, because things don't move necessarily as fast as you want to all the time, and you find yourself coming up constantly up against walls and really struggling to move forwards. And I've done some weird stuff in order to get me to one of the ones that you like, Shayno, is in order to build my confidence about being on stage. Because up until this point in time, I'd just been a carpenter and joiner. I'd never stood up in front of a group of people before. Yep. In terms of a stage, I'd only just done stuff down the pub to try and be impressive. Yep. And so in order to build my confidence, I took almost any gig that I could find. Mm-hmm. And for a short period of time, when I very first arrived in Australia, I worked on a boat that went up and down Sydney Harbour, and I was the MC for a male strip show. So it was me on this stage, stuck out in the middle of Sydney Harbour with 300 crazy ladies, all just screaming and trying to find these strippers, and they were trying to get to those strippers through me. So it was an interesting experience. It learnt me a lot about how to run and hide.
My God, where were you when I was, starting out as a young strapping lad trying to impress the ladies? I'll tell you what, I've had me time again, mate. If we could go back in time 10 years, I'd certainly bring you into my circle of influence. But, wow, what a journey.
Yeah, and so from that as well, from being able to put myself in those positions, to create those opportunities and to stretch myself, what I found happening, and the way that I like to describe this, is back in the UK, we had these fields, and if you ran through these fields, there were these little seeds, and I think you might get them here in Australia, but these little seeds that end up attaching to your trousers.
Right.
And the way that I see people going through life, and just on a daily basis, is you wake up in the morning, and as you start to go about your day, what happens is you pick up these little bits of emotional baggage each day. Maybe you meet somebody and they stress you out slightly, or maybe they say something that doesn't resonate with you. And what ends up happening is that attaches to you. And throughout the day, you get more and more of these things attaching to you. So it's like running through the field with these little seeds suddenly attaching to your trousers.
Right.
And before you know it, you're absolutely covered in all of these little seeds. And I think it's down to us to become conscious, to have this conscious mindset and be aware of what is happening each and every single day. And take time to check in and look down and see how many seeds we're carrying, see what emotional baggage we're carrying and what stress we're carrying. Because otherwise it starts to affect the way that we interact with people throughout the day. If we want to be able to go through life and go through each day and have really good interactions with every single person that we meet, then we need to stop and check in with ourselves before we meet those people and just say, look, who is the person who I need to be turning up in this moment? What is it that I'm currently carrying from one conversation that I might now take into this conversation?
Right.
So I like to call it having a conscious mindset. And it's very simply the question of asking yourself, how should I be turning up? And that's whether you're waking up in the morning, how are you turning up for yourself? Whether that is going into work, maybe you've driven to work, it's been a really stressful drive, there's traffic all over the place. You end up getting to work and you're really stressed out, you rock into work, and you then take this stress out on all of your colleagues at work. But if you were to just stop for a moment and just check in and just say, who is the person who I need to be? It's going to change the way that you interact with people. And I think, although it sounds like a really simple tool, it's one of the tools that I share in my corporate presentations and how I always check in, especially before I'm about to walk up on stage, because I need to be there and be very present and be the entertainer for those people. And it's such a powerful tool. And the people that I've shared it with within the corporate world have said, look, because it's so simple, because you just ask yourself, how do I need to be turning up? It just makes you consciously aware, and it's a game changer.
Amazing. I'm really curious to know how it is that you have come to the point where you can deal with nerves. Like, I've seen you online with some pretty high profile stuff. You were on Australia's Got Talent, is that right?
Yep.
Australia's Got Talent. You've been on morning shows. You've been on all sorts of different stuff where not only do you need to present live on camera, but doing high risk magic tricks at the same time, which not only could cause harm to yourself, but could fail. That could not work. You could potentially read someone's mind wrong, I assume. How do you deal with that pressure when you're backstage before you roll out there? I'm curious.
So that is something which I've now got used to, that feeling. Now, don't get me wrong. I still worry every single time I'm about to go out and do a presentation or go out and do a show. I'm worried that, okay, I might forget what I'm saying. I might do the wrong thing. I might get one of the tricks wrong. I might get injured, because some of the things that I do, as you say, are dangerous. And I suppose this kind of comes back to having the conscious mindset, is whenever I'm presenting up on stage, I'm very aware of who I am in that moment. And I've had people, especially on the cruise ships, you've got all these different people, a lot of them have been drinking all day, and people like yourself, Shayno, that I might suddenly pull up on stage, and they're skeptical and they want to try and mess me up.
Right.
And they're out to make themselves look good by making me look bad.
Oh, it's even worse. It's another layer of complexity to deal with. Yeah, please go on.
And so knowing that ahead of time, though, the one thing that I do know if ever I'm doing a performance or doing magic, that the audience don't know the outcome. So they don't know whereabouts I'm heading. And so if I do make a mistake, it only becomes a mistake when I go, oh no, I've made a mistake. So what I'll do is, if something isn't going quite according to plan, I will adjust there and then on the spot.
Amazing.
The way that I've been able to do that is what I call the 3 Bs. And as you can see, you're interested now.
Yeah.
So the 3 Bs are the brain, the body, and the breath. Okay. So what normally happens, let's say that that you and I, on stage, I've called you up out of the audience. You've had a few too many VBs that day.
Yeah, that's me drinking choice.
And
you read my mind.
reader, see, there we go. And I've got you up on stage, and you've decided that you're going to try and mess things up. For me as a performer, that's obviously now going to make me go, okay, right, I've got a situation here that I've now got to deal with. Right. Now, the first thing that would normally happen in that instance there is when we are suddenly faced with a challenge, or even if you just asked a question by somebody and you don't know the answer to, your brain goes into the freeze, flight, or flight response. And the first response is normally people go, and they hold their breath. As soon as you hold your breath, what you do is you lock in the tension. Imagine like going into a cold shower. As soon as you're about to go into the shower, you hold your breath.
Yeah. It's not the only body transformation that happens to me in that instant, but yeah.
So what I've learned to do is to be very aware of my breath. So when those situations arise, so whether this is backstage, getting ready, and I suddenly feel the nerves kicking in, or whether it's on stage in the moment and I've got somebody up on stage who I think is going to mess me up, I'll remember to breathe. So I'll make sure that I don't hold my breath. So first of all, it's breathing in and then breathing out. So the other thing as well, when you hold your breath, is you lock your body up. So what I also then do is make sure that my body is feeling loose. So it would be breathe in, and as I breathe out, I'll relax my body. And then I will then focus my thoughts on something positive. It sounds like a hard thing to do when you're in a negative situation. Most of the time now I find that by just using the breath and the body, that has enough in order to calm me down. But if not, then it's been scientifically proven that if you just say inside your head, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited, it will change the way that you feel, because the way that the body reacts when we are in a state of fear and when we're excited are exactly the same. It's just what we say to ourselves in our head that makes a difference. So if you breathe in, then breathe out and just allow your body to relax. And then if you just inside your head, you say, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited, it has a calming effect. And that is a tool that I use every time I'm on stage. That is a tool that I use when I'm backstage. Again, it's another really simple tool. Everything that I share and that I use, I like it to be simple because I need to be able to access it instantly.
Yeah. Imagine if the more complex it is, the more difficult it is to draw on the heat of the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so how does somebody learn this stuff? Like you were in this joinery business, you decided whether it was by choice or just by coincidence you wanted to become a mentalist and master this skill. Like, is there some, secret sensei you need to gain approval to in the high temples of Himalayas or something? Like, how on earth does someone learn these skills?
Shayno, I think you've been watching way too many movies.
Bit of a Netflix addict,
I think that with anything, whether it's magic, mentalism, hypnosis, any of those sort of mystical arts, you've got to have a natural interest in people. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make with magic is they think that the magic is the trick itself. The real magic is what actually happens inside the person's head when you do the trick. That for me is what the real magic is. Right. I've seen people I've seen magicians performing shows up on stage where they've got an audience of really intelligent people, and the magician does a trick, like, for example, David Copperfield floating. Yep. They do lots of things to prove that it isn't possible that he's floating. Even though you still know that it's a trick.
It's still impressive.
They're still going, well, if it can't be a trick because he proved that it wasn't a trick. How's it possible? And I've had the same experience. I've done a mind reading thing, and I've told the audience at the start of the show that, look, I'm going to lie to you. Everything that I'm going to show you is I'm using a method in order to do this. I'll then go ahead and do my show, and then afterwards they'll come up and they'll say, well, you told us it was going to be a trick, but that's impossible. Like, how could you must be reading their minds. I'm not reading their minds, but I'm using a process in order to make it look like I'm reading their minds. Right. And so I'm able to stand on stage and lie to an audience and tell them that I'm going to lie, yet they still buy into my lies. It's a really weird sort of situation to be in, and it absolutely baffles me every single time that even though I've told them I'm going to lie, they still believe me. Which is just weird.
That's incredible. So what would be some key sort of like body language analysis or some basic drills that the average person out there listening to this can start practicing today or tomorrow to start tuning in to become a bit better at understanding what the person in front of them, whether that's someone in a board meeting, whether that's their boss and they're asking for a raise, whether that's someone in business they're trying to close a sale, whether that's a parent trying to influence their kid or vice versa. What's the most fundamentals that people could start working on?
Okay, so the first thing is, and this happens all the time, as soon as I say body language, people go, "Oh, awesome! You're going to teach me how to spot when someone's lying."
Right.
I strongly believe that people see body language in the wrong way. They go, if I learn body language, I can read others. If you understand body language, you can use it on yourself so that you can build better relationships, so that you shouldn't end up having to read the other person to work out if they're lying, to work out if they're being deceiving, because you'll have created that much rapport. You will have used your body language to create that connection. That's not to say that understanding body language isn't helpful. What I would say is this. If you want to learn body language really, really, really quickly, and a very simple method for understanding others is to just look if somebody is open or closed. And that's a simple question if you just ask yourself that. Does this person look open or do they look closed? Are they folding their arms?
Yep.
Or are they nice and open?
Yeah.
And that is the simplest way to read body language. Because if you were to learn every single little micro expression, every single little nuance, you're going to be so focused on trying to read them that you're going to become this really weird person in a conversation because you'll be like intently staring at them and watching every move and analyzing them. Yeah. And you're not going to be there present in the interaction. I naturally have a very deep interest in body language. And so I've spent a lot of time reading the books and understanding what the different micro expressions are, what the different nuances are with somebody's body language. And so it's kind of come something that it hasn't come naturally, but it's something that I have now learned and I've developed the skill around. But it's taken me years and years and years to do it. It's like learning a second language. So if you wanted something quick and easy that you could take away straight away from this, it would be just look if somebody is open or closed.
Okay.
And if somebody is generally feeling positive, body language will start to go up. So eyebrows will raise up. Their gestures will start to get upwards. If somebody's not quite so happy, then it will all start to go down. So if you just look at open, closed, up and down, it's just a really simple way to read body language, and it allows you to still be present in the interaction.
Yep. And if someone's body language is closed, what is something you can do, or do you even need to do anything to change that or to change the dynamic of the situation so that it's better for both parties?
Okay, are we talking for girls here? I get a bit of a sense.
Wasn't going to go there, but as expected, you read me mind.
Okay, so let's look at this in two situations here. Let's look at it in a professional setting, then let's look at it in a dating setting.
Right.
Let's say that you're in a meeting, or you even in like a sales presentation, and the person in front of you is closing you off. They've got their arms folded, they're just stonewalling you. They're not letting you in. One of the easiest ways to do this and to get them to open up to you is to hand them something. So like give them, like if you've got a presentation on your iPad, give them the iPad. It means that they have to undo their arms. Now, if you put it slightly out of their reach, not only do they open up their arms, they also then lean in. And leaning in is a sign of interest.
Right.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're subconsciously tapping into their brain, and they're going to go, okay, I'm open up, and now I'm leaning in. This means I'm interested in what is going on here.
Sweet.
And so if you were to use in a dating setting, so if you were down at the pub and the girl was stonewalling you, even just as the simple process of buying them a drink and getting them to hold the drink is then going to get them to open up. I don't know if are you good with buying drinks?
Oh, it depends on what day of the week it is and how far it is to my next paycheck. But yep.
Yeah. So by giving somebody something to do with their hands, it will force them to open up. So that's a really quick little trick.
I'm trying to wonder why sometimes when I've bought a girl a drink, it hasn't worked. Maybe I was doing something else wrong, but we can come back to that.
There are some people that just won't open up their arms.
That's right. On that note, I'm sort of interested. I remember I've read parts of your book and I've seen some of your presentations, and you did mention that you did draw a lot of your skills kind of from the dating coaching world, the pickup world.
Absolutely.
And I was kind of wondering, did you have an interest in that at some point? And if so, did you change your name to Anthony Laye to be more, as a marketing tool?
It's funny actually. You say that when I was younger, it used to be big into hiking,
right?
And my initials are A, E, and then Laye. So Anthony Edward, very English. Anthony Edward Laye. And so at the bottom of my sleep, so the sleeping bag was rolled up, and at the bottom of the sleeping bag I had A, E, Laye. and one of the older kids that was out backpacking with us put an easy over the A and the E, which was
Nice.
which was very nice of him.
Nice.
But going back to your original question is that, look, no, I didn't purposely change my name to as a marketing tool. It has always been Anthony Laye.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's been magic has been a really interesting one. And for me to end up using what is tricks to end up communicating a much bigger message has been really interesting, because when I very first got that pack of cards, a little square box, I never knew that the opportunities that were inside that box would unfold to what they have been, where I now stand on stage and communicate to thousands of people on a weekly basis. Tools that I have used to just be a performer and to just be an entertainer and to mess with people's heads. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
It's been a journey. Well, cheers for that. And I really did enjoy your book, Get Ready for Impact. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Get Ready for Impact. Yeah,
I did remember a chapter in there that talks about dopamine questions. Now, that did pique my interest. Tell us, what are dopamine questions?
So dopamine questions are ways of getting people to like you. So if you give somebody a present, for example, what happens is they get a little neurotransmitter that's released inside the brain called dopamine, which makes them go, "Oh, this is really nice." And we are massively addicted to dopamine. This is the reason why people get addicted to poke machines, or fruit machines as I call them. But those machines there, because what you get is something called random rewards, where they're designed where all of a sudden you'll get a hit of, like, you might get three things in a row, or like a couple of dollars here or a couple of dollars there. But you don't know when it's going to happen. So you end up with these things called random rewards, which is what makes those poker machines so addictive. But we can use it in communication in order to make people addicted to us. And you don't have to buy people presents. What you can do is you can ask interesting questions. So rather than the usual, like, what have you been up to? What's the weather like? If I was to ask a question, and I've used this question at a dinner table at a corporate event, and the question is, if you could take any animal and shrink it down to the size of a mouse and keep it in your pocket, what animal would you choose?
That's a terrific question. What would I do? A peacock.
A peacock.
Yeah.
A peacock. So says a lot about your personality, Shayno.
Oh, jeez.
As a secret side trying to come out of you there. But what that does is it breaks the norm. And someone goes, "Oh, that's an interesting question." And going back to what we were mentioning before, this is also a big part of the dating world, is you go up and you ask people interesting questions. And by doing this, it makes you more memorable, it makes you more intriguing, it makes you stand out. But more importantly, it releases that dopamine. And people, when they get that release of dopamine, they go, I want more of that. So I'll keep talking to this person. I'll keep interacting with this person. And as I say, that's part of how the dating world uses it. Anybody who wants to build rapport, like, yes, there are some great books out there about how to win friends and influence people.
Yep,
Great book. I strongly believe that if you really want to know how to build rapport with people, read a book on dating, on how to be a pickup artist specifically, and read it with the outcome of not necessarily getting somebody on a date or into the bedroom, but read it with the outcome of making friends or connecting with another person. And so there's a book called The Game by Neil Strauss, which is a book written for pickup artists, by pickup artists. And if you take all of the tools inside that and apply those just to the way that you communicate with people on a daily basis, it's a complete game changer. And you never know, you might get lucky.
That's it. Well, to all the listeners out there, I do have one request. If you could hold off on asking that question for 2 weeks, anyone, that gives me a good fortnight lead to go out there and practice it without any competition. After that, time's your own. Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's always like, as you say, it's not just about, trying to go out there and pick up or whatever, but, these skills and tools are handy everywhere and in every context. And we need to be conscious communicators at all times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that you've hit the nail on the head there, is we need to be conscious at all times. Yes, there are a whole bunch of tools that we can use to make us be more appealing as people, be more interesting, to help us build rapport. But the first step of that is to be conscious, is to just be aware of who we are at that present moment in time and take that into the interaction. Then yes, start using the tools, start asking interesting questions, create an amazing first impression in the way that you present yourself. Very important.
Yeah,
Shayno.
I'm all over that.
I like to see that you dressed up for today, and you even did your hair, which was lovely.
Bought my my favourite flannel. If you see this, you know I'm dressed to impress. So.
Nice. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. But yeah, so creating those first impressions is so important. Once you create that first impression, so when it comes to first impression, what instantly happens when you meet somebody new is they go through a few stages to decide if they like you or not. First of all, the brain is deciding, is this person a friend, or are they an enemy, or are they just somebody who is indifferent? Now, most of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to end up in this category of you just being somebody who's indifferent. So you're not necessarily a threat, but they don't know if they like you yet or not, so they'll listen to the next few words. To jump straight into the friend category, you'd normally be introduced by one of their friends. So you become a friend by association. The last thing that you want to end up is in the enemy category, because then people are just going to run away from you.
Right.
Then the next thing that people are looking at is this person a winner or a loser? So that, because as human beings, we naturally want to be around people that are going to lift us up, that might give us access to other people, to amazing things. So the next question is winner or loser. And so we want to be displaying ourselves as winners. And a lot of that comes down to the way that we present ourselves, our body language, the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we dress, the way that we interact with other people. And then the final stage is this person going to cause me any harm? Are they basically going to give, or are they going to take away?
Right.
And so, for example, in a sales situation, you might meet a salesperson who they come across as really, really nice. They look really well presented, but at the end, that last little level might just go, but it feels like they're going to take something away from me. And I think this is the reason why sales has got such a bad rap, because that last little factor, we've been hardwired to assume that salespeople are going to try and take from us,
right.
Which is the reason why a lot of salespeople, that people don't warm towards them, because they don't pass this last level of first impressions.
And I assume people are making these assessments real fast, right? This is
yeah. So it's we don't even consciously do it. It's all done subconsciously. It's done by the reptilian brain. And so we need to be able to pass all three levels to create a good first impression.
Right.
And as I say, a big part of that comes down to, first of all, being conscious, how you're turning up, because that energy, that intention will flow over to the other person. And then the second part is how are we turning up? How are we presenting ourselves to other people?
Nice. Amazing, man. This is I tell you what, I'll certainly be listening to the recording of this and taking some notes. I can't do it at the moment, but you've shared so much gold. I guess one thing I'm really curious to know is, you've come from this background, you were in the corporate performance, magic environment, but a lot's changed in the last few months. Bucket loads has changed worldwide and here in Australia, and I'm assuming you've had to pivot in some way. You've had to pivot what you do professionally and what you're putting out there. So tell us a little bit about that, what you've learnt and what you're sort of focusing on now.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously going on stage at this present moment in time is not an option.
Right.
So my new stage is now presenting on camera. So going on webinars and doing virtual training and that kind of thing, which has been really interesting transition, because I've gone from being in front of a room of people where I can get a sense of the energy. I can see if they're smiling, if they're laughing, and how they're responding, to that audience now being just a black circular lens, which doesn't necessarily give me any energy. I can't tell if people on the other end are laughing or not. And so that's been a very interesting, I'm not going to use the word challenging, it's been a very interesting journey in learning to use slightly different tools to keep that engagement there with the audience, but more so being really aware of myself when I've been turning up, because it's so easy with the camera just being there to not come in with as much energy, right, and to not think about how I'm presenting, because you're not getting that feedback from the audience. And so there's three things which I've found that run over from whether you're presenting on stage or whether you're presenting on camera.
Cool.
And those three things are, first of all, you've got to have the confidence. And that confidence, so if you're just speaking, then that confidence is going to be, you're going to have to focus even more so on your voice and sounding confident when you're delivering. If there's video involved, then not only have you got to think about your voice, you've also got to think about how you're presenting yourself. A lot of people on camera will go very still. A lot of people tend to sit down when they're on camera. Their arms will go out of sight and the camera will be at a low angle. And it's just not going to do anything good for making you look confident. So you've really got to think about your voice and your body when you're on camera. Also your gestures as well. I mean, even though we're on this now and we're talking on a podcast, and if you're watching the video version, then you're going to see that I'm gesturing. If you're just listening to this, then I'm gesturing, and I'm gesturing because it changes the way that I sound.
Right.
So it's still really important to gesture, to bring that confidence there. So confidence is the first thing. Then the second thing is you've got to bring the energy. You've got to bring the passion. That doesn't mean that you need to be like you've suddenly had like three cups of coffee or 3 cans of what's your favorite, V or Red Bull or something.
Oh,
like
a bit
that.
of a mother fan.
Bit of a mother fan. Okay, of course you are, Shayno. So you don't need to be like you've had that, but you need to bring that energy, which comes about from being conscious again. You need to decide how you were turning up. I'm quite an energetic presenter. When I've got the cameras on, I'm gesturing around all over the place, moving around a lot. That's just a natural energy that I bring to it. That's what I'm like on stage as well. But there are also very powerful presenters out there that are very, I suppose, a good way of saying it is they're a lot firmer in the way that they stand and they deliver their words with not so much movement, but they still have that passion. They still have that intention. They still have that energy there. And I've tried to change the way that I sound a little bit, just so you can hear it there. So you've got to have that energy. You've got to have that enthusiasm. You've got to have that passion that you bring to the table. And one of the things, especially with camera, is the camera's a bit like an energy vortex. It sucks a bit of the energy. You might think that you're really going for it, but when it comes out on camera, it looks low energy. So you need to come in with another 20%.
Like when you're on the dance floor and you think you're just caning it, and when you see someone's footage of it, like, not so much. I think.
So something similar to that. I haven't seen any of your dancing, Shayno. I imagine you clearly rock it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, now I do anyway. Yeah, I've had a few lessons, but yeah.
Lessons in any particular style, or?
Well, I mean, I've been watching a few salsa things online and so forth. I'm yet to actually test it in the field, but I'm more enthusiastic to try these questions out next time, man. So we'll worry about the dancing on another stage.
Fantastic. And then, the final thing. So we've got confidence, we've got energy and enthusiasm, and then the final part is contrast. And people just go, "What? Like, how can that be one of the secret weapons?" You see, contrast is what makes you interesting. Contrast is what's going to bring in some more of the dopamine. You're still looking at me like just going, what are you talking about with contrast?
I'm flabbergasted as you can get dopamine from questions and contrast. I mean, I certainly would have chosen a few different behaviours in my early 20s if I'd known that, but please continue about contrast.
This is the covert way of doing it.
Right.
But by adding contrast, and what I mean here is, if you change the way that you use your voice, if you change the way that you use your body, then you sound more interesting. Right. A big mistake that a lot of people make, whether that's speaking on stage or whether that's speaking on camera, or even if it's just having a conversation one-on-one with another person, is what will happen is they'll start to sound exactly the same. Their voice won't really change very much. They won't use their body very much. And you become boring. And for the listener, I can't do it for much longer. And so for the listener, they'll start to tune out because it almost becomes hypnotic. So their brain starts to predict, because the brain is constantly trying to save energy. And so if the brain can go, well, I know what you're going to say next, or I can predict how you're going to behave next, then I don't need to focus so much on this. So I'll start to shut down. So if you are monotone in your voice and in your body, then the listener will start to tune out. They'll start to shut down.
Right.
Which means that they're not going to listen to you anymore.
Gotcha.
But by adding contrast, what you do is you add in these little spikes of dopamine, these spikes of being interesting, and all of a sudden, that listener's brain wakes up and goes, "Oh, I've got to stay attentive here because this is changing."
Right.
So if you're on camera, that could be that you move close to the camera, then you move further away. It could be that 1 minute you're presenting where you're talking, and the next minute you're doing something on a whiteboard behind. You're changing the way you use your voice. So you might be really excited at one point, and then suddenly you've got to talk about something that's serious, so then you change the way that you use your tone, and you change the speed at which you're talking. So all of these things, they add contrast. They make you more interesting as a communicator.
Yeah, right, okay.
And I honestly think that contrast could be the secret sauce. So look, lucky for you, Shayno, that you don't necessarily need to be highly skilled in order to be, no offense meant there, Shayno, but you don't necessarily need to be highly skilled in order to be a great presenter. If you come to a presentation with confidence, okay, if you come in with energy and if you come in with contrast, that will be a game changer. That can make anybody a really good communicator, because there are some speakers out there that are on the circuit. They've got huge following. They've done a TED talk. They're not the best speakers in the world, but because they bring to the table, they bring confidence around their topic. They bring in that energy and that enthusiasm and that passion, and they also add in the contrast. They become these world-class speakers, but technically they're not necessarily world-class, but they're a world-class speaker because people want to listen to them. People will pay attention when they speak.
They're hitting on the main things. They're hitting on the main things that give a good presentation. Yeah. Quick question on that, though. I'm kind of interested to know. I mean, that sounds really, really awesome, and I'm sure it knocks it out of the park when people do it. What would be your advice, though, for folks who aren't used to behaving like that, they aren't used to presenting like that, who feel uncomfortable or feel like it's out of character, or that people are going to criticize them if they start stepping into this new way of behaving? And how do you deal with that criticism and that uncomfortability of stepping out of who it is you are? How would you tackle that?
Okay, that is a really, really, really cool question. And let me try and unpack this for you. Before I got into the speaking world, before I got into the entertainment world, there's no way that I would have used my voice in this way. It has taken me time in order to get to this point. But what happens is this. As a kid, we run around, we'd probably sing in the supermarket, you'd shout down the street. You're quite happy to express yourself in any way that you feel like it when you're a young kid. And what happens is we then start to become conditioned by sort of social norms and social rules and that kind of thing. And they did a really interesting study on this, and they found that before a child goes to school, they have about 400 different, it's just over 400 different non-verbal cues that they will show. By the time they leave school, that has been brought down to under 100. So being told to shush, or being asked to stand up in front of the class and read, and then it doesn't go quite right, then the class laugh at them, which then causes them to shrink. Then there could be some of the things that our parents say, like maybe we're running around the room and making lots of noise, and our parents go, "Oh, can you just be quiet? Can you just be quiet?" Which then tells us we should stop talking. So we start to get conditioned, and this is just what happens. It happens to every single person. And what I call this is shrinking the wrapper. So who we are as communicators as we go through life, we start to have our wrapper, it's tightened up around us. And what we need to do is become aware of this, become conscious. Again, the word conscious is coming up time and time again here, but we need to become conscious of this and start to stretch that wrapper. I'm not saying go from somebody who doesn't gesture at all to all of a sudden like leaping around like some angry Italian, gesturing around all over the place, but just start to push it a little bit. Start to be a bit more expressive when you're talking, and start to stretch the wrapper. Start to allow yourself to be more of you, because that is it's there. It is there inside of you. Yeah. It's just that you've been conditioned to act in a certain way. Right. And the one thing that I have discovered from being a speaker on stage is that the more I allow myself to be me, the more I allow myself to let go, the more engaged the audience are, the more I can hold a room of people. And when I'm doing a corporate setting, I'm at conferences where a lot of the time people have had to attend the conference. They don't necessarily want to be there. And so I've got a very small amount of time when I walk out on stage as to whether they're going to look at me or whether they're going to put their heads down and check their emails on their phones and that kind of thing. Right. And I honestly believe that by just coming in with those three things, having the confidence, the energy, enthusiasm, and also the contrast, is what allows me to cut straight through and just instantly get their attention from thinking about other things to drawing their attention towards me. And as I say, it has taken me time to become comfortable being me, but when you do, it is a really liberating experience, and people like you more when you're more exciting. Because, right, so there's a golden rule that I live by, Shayno, and this one simple rule has been a game changer, and that is this: there is not one person who I meet on any day that woke up saying, "I hope today's really rubbish. I hope I meet people that are boring." There is not one person that attends one of my keynotes or one of my shows and walks in going, I hope this next speaker is really boring and really rubbish. Every single person wants to be entertained. Every single person wants to have a good time. The problem is we've been conditioned to behave in certain ways. And so the audience might not want to clap because they're worried how they're going to look to other people. And I see it as my job as a communicator to show people that it is okay to have a good time, because that's why we're here. We're here to have a good time. And I approach everything with that mindset. There's so many times that I've been asked to do a corporate event, and I always have a briefing call beforehand.
Yep.
And during the briefing call, the event organizer might go, look, they're a pretty conservative group. They don't really get into things. They don't like getting involved. I'm just like, no, they do. They do like getting involved. I've got to involve them in the right way. Okay, there are some people that don't necessarily want to stand up in front of the room, but everybody wants to have a good time. And so as soon as you show them how to have that good time, you bring that energy, then they start to open up and they start to go, oh, do you know what? This is fun. Okay, I don't want to be up on stage with him, but I'll start to clap and afterwards they have a good time, because I've gone in there with the intention of, I want to show these people that it's fine to have fun, rather than, okay, I'm going to do stuff, but I know that you don't like really getting involved. If I went in with that mindset, I would just fall flat.
One thing I'm picking up here, can I call you Tony?
You can call me Tony, Shayno.
Oh, good. One thing I'm picking up, it sounds like the more, one of the key principles of your success has been making everything you do about other people. It's about serving the room. It's about lighting them up. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's a really good pickup, Shayno.
That's what it sounds like.
That's a really good pickup. Yes, it is. And so anybody who fears public speaking, I tell them to shift the focus off of them, because if they fear public speaking, it's because their ego is talking. They're worried about how they're going to look. They're worried that they might make a mistake. The second you shift your focus and you say, I'm here to serve the audience. I'm here to add value to the audience. I'm really excited about being able to share with the audience, about being able to show them a good time. It changes that dynamic, because instead of being about the presenter, about me, it then becomes about the audience. There is not a single time that I go live. There is not a single time that I walk on stage. There is not a single time that I do a presentation that I don't have a feeling inside.
Sure.
I still get the I don't like to call it nerves and anxiety, but I still get that feeling of nerves and anxiety. But I've done it enough now to see it as excitement. I see it now as a force that drives me forwards rather than holds me back. And that's come through exposure and through constantly doing it. One thing I would say is anybody can get up on stage and present. Anybody can get up on stage and deliver a talk. Yes, it will be nerve-wracking the first time you do it. And the first gig that I ever did was as a roving magician. So I'd just only have to go up to a table of people, and it was a table normally between 2 or 10 people, and I'd have to spend 5 or 6 minutes, do a few tricks, and that was it. The first time I ever did a gig where it wasn't down the pub where I was drunk, I was that nervous that in the week running up to the event, I would get night sweats, got really irritable, really cranky with all the people around me, felt physically sick about having to do this presentation. And so I know that if I've been able to push through that and get over these nerves and this anxiety to the point where I can now stand on stage in front of 7,000 people, if I can do it, then anybody else can do it. It's just a case of getting out there and doing it and stop hiding.
I tell you what, that's really good to know, because when I've seen the footage of you online, presenting on some of these crazy shows in front of thousands of people, and obviously telecast to many, many millions of people in the days that follow, it would be easy for someone to assume that you are just a Jedi Knight of being on stage, and you just got this charisma, and you've always had it, and you were born with it. Right, you just got this gift, but everything you just shared in the last couple of minutes leads me to believe that you're no different, or you were no different to anyone else.
No.
But you just found a way to work through it and sort of solve it in your own mind and in your own body about how to work through those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. It is finding the opportunities to push yourself out of your comfort zone. One thing which I've made a few big leaps at times. For example, the first time I ever did TV, I'd never had any training on how to do TV. And so that was a big, scary leap. But a lot of the time, I have taken steps, but I've done it in a very calculated sort of way. I push myself don't get me wrong, I push myself out of my comfort zone, but I've done it in ways so that if it did go wrong, then I never worried about it. One of my mentors said to me, in order to be good, first of all, you need to find a place to be bad. So I would choose the places whereabouts I could absolutely bomb. And if it went wrong, I just didn't take it to heart. I went, okay, what did I learn from that? And that has allowed me to really push myself out there. So yeah, in order to get be comfortable just standing on stage, I entered. Let's rephrase this. I didn't enter. My wife Nicola's, I'm very, very lucky in that she's really supportive and has always pushed me. She's one of the people that has never tried to hold me back.
Yep.
And when it came to me first doing stage work, I was really worried because I'd never been on stage before. I was like, how do I get stage time? Because stage time's a really hard thing to get.
Right.
Because you can't just find a room and just get a whole bunch of people in it and stand up in front of them and do some stuff. So Nicola entered me into a competition. And she said, look, just go to this competition, just turn up and just do it. Ended up being one of these muscle competitions. So I turn up.
Right, I went visual on that.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, trust me, it's going to get more visual now. So I turn up at this event, realize what it is, phone up Nicola and say, look, what have you put me in for? And she had basically said, just take this with you. And so I had the right gear with me in order to be up on the stage. It was 3 different outfits that you needed. And so I arrive, try to get out of it. Nicola goes, no, you're doing it. Get in there. So I go and register. I walk down this corridor, and all I can hear, and I'll try to make this a sound on the microphone. All I can hear is this. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? So I walk into the change room, and I walk in, and there's this room full of guys, and so I never knew this, but with the big muscle guys, where they're flexing all their muscles, they put this. Like it's like a tanning solution, but it's instant, and they put it all over their bodies. But they slap it on, so they clap in order to put. So this noise I could hear was these guys slapping this tan stuff all over them to make their muscles look more defined. I walked in there, I didn't have any of this stuff. I wasn't even this. Okay, I was doing carpentry at the time, so I was slightly bigger built just from lifting and doing manual labor all the time, but I wasn't toned and ripped and muscly like these guys. And I walk in and they all just sort of just turn and look at me. I was like, yeah, I am in the wrong room here. But start setting my stuff up, and one of the guys turns around to me and goes, oh, do you want to borrow some of this tanning stuff? And I was like, oh, no, it's all right. Anyway, long story short, I ended up doing, I saw it through. I went through and did the whole competition, went out on stage, tried to strike these poses. There's this muscle dude with, obviously clearly without being muscly at all.
Well, if you're watching this in the video format, hopefully we've had the opportunity to flash up some photos of this. If you've
there is. I am very fortunate in that there is no footage of this happening, and there is no photographs. Although, so there was 2 categories. There was the really muscly ones, and then there was the sports models as well.
Right.
And I have a trophy. I don't have it here. It's back in the UK in a place where it should stay. But I came 4th.
Jeez.
Probably because there was only 4 people in the sports category. Oh. But I came 4th. But I remember though that there was this one guy who walked out and he was super charismatic. At this time, bear in mind, at this point in time, I was not charismatic at all. Right. Like not in the slightest bit charismatic. And this one guy came out and he did all these cool like dance moves. It's a bit like a catwalk thing. You had to walk to the center of the stage, do a move, walk to the end of the stage, do another move, and then walk back. And this guy, he had this hat and I took his hat off and he frisbeed it out into the audience and this sort of thing. I was like, oh yeah, like it was a big learning curve for me though.
Sounds like you've really had, it's come from the school of hard knocks. It's not been just this smooth sailing, straight for the holy grail kind of journey.
Not
Absolutely love it.
From working strip boats to doing muscle competitions to working on cruise ships and all the stuff in between.
It's an interesting story because I think, in today's day and age, we're really big on instant gratification. We see stars online and on TV, and we're like, yeah, I want a bit of that. And I think a lot of us forget the amount of legwork and the amount of highs and lows and peaks and troughs and having to pick yourself up and dust yourself up along the way that's involved in becoming, a high performer in any area. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People need to understand that there's a lot of patience involved and there is a lot of ups and downs. There are some people that do it quicker than others, but that's not to say that they're not putting in the hard work. I think Simon Sinek said it really well when he said, Everybody wants to get to the top of the mountain, but in order to get to the top of the mountain, you still need to go up the mountain. You can do that fast or slow, but you've still got to go up the mountain. You can't just suddenly be put there. 100%. And it's been an interesting journey. I'm still constantly learning, especially now going virtual. Yep. But I think you've got to see all of these challenges, all of these things that happen. You've got to see them as part of the journey, and have the goal in mind, but don't be so fixated on the goal that you don't enjoy the journey on the way. Got
it. Incredible words, mate. It's been an absolute game changer having on you this talk show today, or my podcast, and I've got a lot to go away and think about. I did tell some mates of mine that I was going to come and do this with you, and
oh, nice.
I do have one quick question for me mate Jacko. He's from Logan, the south side of Brizzy, and I said I was going to be doing a podcast with a mentalist, and a magician, and he did ask me to ask you, are you able to make his criminal record disappear?
Well, it depends.
Really? Well, what's the variable?
On the amount of money involved.
Okay. Well, we'll hit stop. We'll hit stop before we discuss that. Quickly before the lawnmower arcs up, mate. How can people get a hold of you? There's obviously a lot you've spoken about that would resonate with a lot of people out there. If people need your help, how do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. I think probably the place that I'm most active at the moment is Facebook. Facebook. For most of the content that I put a lot of short form content out, right. Lots of real quick tips on Facebook. There is a Facebook group as well, which is called the Superhero Speaker Academy, which is whereabouts I dive into the content in a bit more depth.
Yep.
Or alternatively, just go and check out the website and send me an email. AnthonyLaye.com.
Sounds like a plan. And Laye by birth name, as we found out.
Well, it is by birth name, yes, not by circumstances or situation.
Not by marketing angle. Got it. Anthony Laye, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and having a chat with me today, and I'm looking forward to chatting you again down the path.
Thank you very much, Shayno.
Alrighty.
So before I let Shayno leave, I think it's only right that I do show Shayno a quick couple of things. So I'm going to show you two things, Shayno. The first one is going to be magic, sleight of hand, and then the second thing is going to be a bit more down the mentalism route, a bit more about the power of the mind. Right. So we're going to see if we can get through that lovely mullet of yours and see if we can tap into your mind.
Sweet.
So let's start out with a quick magic trick. So grab any card out that you want to. You're more than welcome to shuffle them if you want to, but you can trust me that they're all completely different. On that, you happy with it?
I am.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do, Shayno, is this isn't just a cheeky way of me getting your autograph, seeing as I know you're such a big celebrity these days.
Absolutely. Sign your name on the face of the card there, Shayno. Facing this way, yeah? Yeah. Good.
I'll tell you what, show the camera as well once you've done it.
Yep.
There's Shayno's autograph. All right. Now, what we're going to do. Now, the reason why
a legal document with that one.
The reason why I've got you to sign your name across it is so that you know that I don't have another one in the pack. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your card. That's probably about the bottom. That's sort of about the middle there, isn't it? It doesn't matter too much, as long as it's not up on top. About the middle, like so. Now, I'll push it all the way in. Now, it's just to test how much VB you've been drinking today. Okay. Because if you weren't watching closely, you wouldn't have realised that I put it straight back up on top. Okay, we'll do it again. Take your card and we'll put it in about the middle again, okay? You can that's definitely the middle there, yeah? You don't have too much VB, that's definitely about the middle. Okay, now you might think at this point that I cheat and I keep it up on top like that as a 3. I give one little snap and that 3 should then turn into your 4.
You spiked my drink, right? That ain't water.
This is, this could be the classic example of stunned mullet, I do believe. Look, let's do it again one more time, look. Protect the 4. Put that one in about there. Now I'll take the next one for top, which is a jack. Now, okay, now if I knock in your card with the jack, if I was to knock that jack just a little bit too hard, turn it over and have a look.
This I don't believe it. I'm being set up. Very impressive.
We're going to do it one last time, okay, Shayno? I'm going to do this here. Now I'm going to go super slow for you this time. Not just for you, Shayno, but I am going to go slow. There's your card there. Okay, Shayno, would you be impressed if I was to take your card from there, put it on top of that 7, and then make it jump up on top of the 3? Would you be impressed?
I would be. I don't believe you can do it.
You don't believe I can do it? Here we go. I'll tell you what I'll do. Look, there's your Shayno. There's a Shayno there. Watch this. I'll put that all the way in there. Now, to make sure I don't cheat, you can even push it all the way in for me. Watch closely. Yep, that's it. Make sure I don't cheat. Okay, Shayno, you hold on to the cards. What I want you to do is imagine now.
I'm going to check. Wait. There's got to be other Shayno signatures in here somewhere. No. Whatever. Too good.
Well, let's do another one.
Right.
So that was magic. Now let's try some mind reading. Okay. What we're going to do?
Smarty pants. Let's see if you can raise the stakes.
Okay. Let's raise the stakes. Now, do you have a favourite card at all in the deck?
Sure.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, if you just gone for the Ace of Spades, then change your mind. Was it the Ace of Spades?
Yeah. All right, I've changed it.
You changed it. Okay. That card that you have in your mind, was it a free choice?
Yes.
It was. Okay, I'm going to go through the pack like this. When you see the card that you're thinking of, just say stop. I'll go quite quick, but just say stop when you see it. Now, it should be a full pack, so it should be there somewhere. Okay. It's not the one on the bottom, is it? Because that would just be boring. Okay, I'll go a little bit faster. Try not to drop them.
So.
This one?
Yeah.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay, now rather than remember the whole thing, I know that this is really near the bottom, but rather than remember the whole thing, this bit up in the corner here, so the index, so that bit up in the corner there, that's what I want you to focus on. You got it? Okay. Now I know that's really near the bottom, so give those a bit of a mix up for me. Just make sure that you remember your card. Okay? So mix. Nice shuffling there, Shayno.
Yeah.
Poker night with the boys, clearly very interesting when you're onto it.
There we go. Pretty sure that's solid.
Excellent. So this is what's going to happen. I want you to now imagine that there is a corridor in front of you.
Right.
Okay, and on one side of the corridor, don't give anything away now, but on one side of the corridor there's a red wall, and on the other side there is a black wall. At the end of the corridor there's a door, and on the door you've got the different suits. So you've got the hearts, the diamonds, the clubs, and the spades.
Yep.
And then you open up that door. When you open up that door, you've got all the different values floating around, so the numbers, and then you've got the jack, the queen, the king as well. They're floating around there.
Right. Let me imagine. Yep.
I'm going to take out the card I think you think of. Now I might have got the suit wrong. I'm pretty sure I've got the value right and the colour, but I might have got the suit wrong. That is a card that I think you were thinking of. Would you be impressed if that was your card?
Yes, I absolutely would.
Okay, Shayno, but this is where we're going to take it to another level, Shayno, okay? Because throughout that whole process, I've been trying to get through that mullet of yours, and I've been trying to put a card inside your mind. So your job is to now, effectively, read my mind.
Okay.
I want you to take the pack, I want you to go through, and I want you to take out the card that you think I'm thinking of. And then you're going to put it face down on the table next to this one. Okay? So trust your instincts here. Okay? The card that you think I'm thinking of, take it and put it face down. I'm going to close my eyes as you do this. Take it out and then put it face down. And tell me when you're done.
Alright. Trusting me instincts.
You done?
Yep.
Sounds like a card went down. Is there a card down?
Yes, it's a card down.
Is it face down?
It's face down.
Okay. Now, just in case you think that the cards are marked on the back, they're not, but just in case you think that they are, before I open up my eyes, the card that you've just taken out, cover it with your hands for me. So when I open up my eyes, all I'll see is the one that I took out before. Is that done?
Yep.
So back at the beginning, you were thinking of a playing card. What was the card that you were thinking of?
I was thinking of a 9 of hearts.
9 of hearts. That's exactly what I took out. But this wasn't about me. This wasn't about me reading your mind. This was about you reading my mind. If you've trusted your instincts and went for the card that felt right, the card that I was thinking of is a 2 of clubs.
You gotta teach me this stuff, mate. Yeah, it's gotta be other applications for this. I mean, surely, if you know what the jury's thinking, you know what the judges think, right? You can anticipate your defense in advance. You could, you can imagine what the police officer's thinking. You can, jeez.
There's lots of ways that these tools can be applied. I prefer to use them for good, Shayno.
But what I love most is that, did you do anything different on me that you would on anyone else?
Did you feel me do anything?
Not really.
So that happens a lot, hey, Shayno?
That tells me that, despite what I might have thought, my mind does actually still work the same as everyone else.
Hasn't been
which
killed.
is a big relief.
It hasn't been killed by VB just yet.
It's a big relief, let me tell you right now.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Absolute pleasure.